Well, for more insight into French President Macron's visit to China, we're joined by Klaus Larres. He's Professor of History and International Affairs at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. So let's start with what you thought were some of the key takeaways in terms of deals and areas of cooperation highlighted on this trip.
Yeah, I think President Macron had a very successful trip to China. It was his first trip, and the trip is supposed to be repeated annually. And he even managed to speak some Mandarin, which went down very well in China. But he had four objectives, I would say, and all these four objectives he more or less succeeded in bringing across. His first objective probably was to show that Europe was back, that Europe is it continues to be a strong political and economic player. And secondly, he of course wanted to make sure that France was seen as the new leader of Europe. With Angela Merkel in a deep governmental crisis in Berlin, with the British having excluded themselves via Brexit from much of international affairs, I think he saw the chance to represent France as the leader of the West and the leader of Europe. And thirdly, of course, he wanted to obtain good trade deals, and he succeeded at least to a great extent in doing so. And fourthly, I think Macron wanted to undermine the nationalist agenda of President Trump in Washington by deeper cooperation, a new strategic partnership with China. And I think he also largely succeeded in doing that. And we heard before that he talked about make our planet great again, and that he embarked on a new ecological partnership with China. And that clearly was directed against the agenda of President Trump.
So then, Klaus, how far do you think this first state visit goes in terms of furthering China-France relations?
It has helped a lot. I think China was clearly flattered by the attention Macron gave to them. He clearly knows that China is still the market of the future and the geopolitical player of the future, and that France wants to be in that relationship. So I think, Chinese-French relations have certainly become much better because of that visit. Whether that visit then now can be filled out with some practical realities like cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative, that big infrastructure project, whether these Airbus deals really will come to fruition. They were announced during the visit, but they haven't actually come to fruition. And whether the sale of Airbus jets to China will really happen in the future is expected, but we never know whether that will happen.
Now, Klaus, Macron did signal that France's interest in the Belt and Road, but he also had a caveat that it shouldn't be one way in terms of economic gains. What do you see as some of the other economic issues that could potentially be sticking points between the two countries?
Yeah, as you know, that there is at present there is increasing discontent with the unequal trade and investment relationship between China and the Western world, including France. France, for example, has a $36 billion trade deficit with China, and so all European leaders and the American president, including also President Macron, talk about parity in trade relations and reciprocity in market access and investment and trade relations. And I think they are dead serious about that, and they want to shift the balance towards in the direction of a more equal balance. And I'm sure in private conversations with President Xi Jinping, he will have done so and will really have pushed for that. And I would assume that in the long run, China will have to give a little bit and really take these concerns of the Europeans, including President Macron, into consideration. And I think they should, in order to facilitate a better European-French-Chinese relationship.
Now, Klaus, we know that Macron did travel with a large business delegation. So from a business perspective, what does each country have to gain from having a stronger relationship with each other?
China is, of course, France's biggest Asian market. So France needs China as a market for its exports. And the pushing of the Airbus sales is a clear symptom of that. You know, it was announced that probably in all likelihood 184 A320 Airbuses will be sold, and also the A380, that's a double-decker super jumbo, which is in big trouble at the moment, it was mentioned that a deal with China was on the table, and that would actually be a rescue packet for the A380. A deal with Emirates airline fell through a couple of months ago. 13 Airjets could not be sold to the Emirates, and I think if these 30 Airjets could now be sold to China, or even more, that would be a rescue packet for the A380.
All right, well, thank you so much for your insights, Professor Klaus Larres there from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.